Hi everyone, I'm Scott. Welcome back to my YouTube series, Biggest Movie Summer Ever. Yes, I just wanted to make sure I got the order of those words right. Biggest Movie Summer Ever, where I look at the summer movie seasons of years past and say which one was the biggest one. It's all sort of like relative. Yesterday, of course, I did my video in 1993, and I'd like to jump to the very next year, 1994, and talk about some of the movies that came out that year. First of all, Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was a huge, massive success that people just fell in love with, and it won Best Picture and Best Director and Best Actor and Best Visual Effects, and both Jenny and Lieutenant Dan, I think, were nominated as well. It has gotten something of a bad reputation in years past because people are angry that it won over Pulp Fiction. But honestly, I think Forrest Gump is actually a slightly better made movie than Pulp Fiction, just slightly. It's just paced slightly better. Pulp Fiction's kind of slow. I'm a longtime Zemeckis fan, so I was totally on board for whatever was happening there. People just thought it was maybe a little bit too sappy. But there's plenty of instances in the movie where, the movie is making fun of Forrest Gump because he doesn't understand. He's a bit slow on the uptake and doesn't understand what's happening. And plus that pop soundtrack with nothing but, top 40 singles from all the years over the movie takes place, yeah. Some people are a little annoyed by that, but, different strokes, right? True Lies came out that summer. True Lies was another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, another big hit for him, and certainly a big budget. It was $120 million, which was the highest budget for any movie up until that point. Of course, now we've got Pirates of the Caribbean 4 and Age of Ultron beating that out easily with budgets in excess of like $400 million. Seriously, over $400 million is spent on Age of Ultron. Ugh. I'm not the biggest fan of that one, despite the fact that I love Joss Whedon. But aside from those two movies, the biggest #1 hit movie of the year was The Lion King, a movie which I saw but never had the affection for that a lot of other people do, and I think probably that's because I was 21 at the time and didn't care nearly as much about Disney animated films, despite the fact that Aladdin came out 2 years earlier, and it's one of my favorite movies ever. I love that one. The Lion King wasn't really into. I don't know, maybe too many cutesy talking animals, what have you. Anyway, huge, massive success, and kind of an anomaly because it wasn't actually based on a fairy tale or some sort of source material like that. It was an original story completely. Obviously inspired by previous stories, as most stories are. But yeah, quite a big success. Also, another big success that came out that summer, Speed. Jan de Bont's first movie as a director, is a DP, worked on a bunch of really great-looking movies, and so his first movie as a director had Keanu Reeves playing a cop trying to stop a madman from blowing up a bus that will explode if it goes any slower than 50 miles an hour. Really fun movie. Really lots of fun at all. Lots of fun at all. That's not a thing. Dennis Hopper was the bad guy, the bomber. Sandra Bullock was her big breakout movie. She became a huge star after that. Was the leading lady in movies the very next year. Jeff Daniels as Keanu's partner. Lots of fun. Really funny dialogue. Exciting. Totally absurd and unbelievable, but what a great time. Also another great time, probably my favorite Jim Carrey comedy, The Mask. The Mask came out that summer. And of course, Jim Carrey also had Ace Ventura, Pet Detective at the beginning of the year, and Dumb and Dumber with Jeff Daniels at the end of the year. So he had a huge 1994. But The Mask is like my favorite. I just love that movie. I love the effects. I love the characters. I love the character of Stanley Ipkiss. It's great. I really like it a lot. What else came out? Bunch of really bad movies. Bunch of really terrible movies that, didn't do well at all the box office. #1 in this case is a movie called Color of Night. Color of Night was a Bruce Willis movie. Bruce Willis, of course, had somewhat recovered from his mega bomb in 1991 called Hudson Hawk, with a couple other movies. He did a movie called Striking Distance, which was an action movie that was okay, I guess. He did the comedy the year before that with Robert Zemeckis called Death Becomes Her, which was sort of casting against type for him. But Color of Night is a suspense thriller about a psychiatrist who his friend gets stabbed to death, and so he ends up taking over his therapy group, and one of the people in the group might be the killer, and it's a completely ridiculous, overacted, melodramatic movie that no one could take seriously for a second. Plus, there's just like a ton of unnecessary sex scenes in the movie. Not that I would complain about unnecessary sex scenes in 1994. As my philosophy was, the more the merrier, especially when someone as pretty as Jane March is the girl in those scenes and is like naked all the time. But yeah, a big disaster. Terrible movie, big disaster. Another big disaster, Wyatt Earp, Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner decides he wants to make a Wyatt Earp movie, but unfortunately it came out 6 months after Kurt Russell played Wyatt Earp in Tombstone, which is a movie that I can't say was better, but it was more entertaining, more fun. Wyatt Earp's a deeply serious, self-serious movie that is just a crushing bore, and it's about 3 hours long. And it doesn't have Val Kilmer playing Doc Holliday, which is a serious disadvantage. Too bad for Wyatt Earp. I saw the trailer for that movie, the teaser trailer with the music, and I thought, ooh, that is a Best Picture nominee right there. Sorry, no Best Picture nomination for Wyatt Earp. Alec Baldwin was in a movie called The Shadow, which is based on a character that first appeared in radio serials way back when, before there was even TV. He's a crime fighter, basically, who specializes in mind manipulation. It turned out to be a pretty ridiculous movie that, again, nobody could really take seriously, just like Color of Night. I did see that movie. The director was, I think, Russell Mulcahy. I could be wrong about that, but I've seen a couple of his movies and kind of enjoyed them for their trashy entertainment value. I didn't see The Shadow in the theater. I saw it on video, and I'm really glad I didn't pay money to see it in the theater. I Love Trouble. I Love Trouble's a notorious bomb. Julia Roberts, of course, was one of the biggest stars of the 90s after Pretty Woman and some of the other films that she was in. She was doing a romantic comedy with Nick Nolte, who was also a fairly big star at the time, after appearing in Princess Tides and Cape Fear and a couple other films. They apparently didn't work well together. Maybe they didn't get along. I don't know. But yeah, it was another movie that just didn't work. Just didn't work. A romantic comedy in which they're both like investigating a corporation that's like involved in like toxic chemicals or something like that. I don't even remember what it was. I saw the movie. I don't remember hardly anything about it except the song that played in the trailer. That's pretty much all I remember about it. Oh, and at one point Julia Roberts impersonates a tour guide at the very chemical plant that she's like investigating. Something like that. It's been a long time, but it was a big disaster. Blown Away was a movie that Tom Lee Jones was in the year after The Fugitive. He is an Irish bomb maker, terrorist, and Jeff Bridges is the former Irish national who's now a Boston cop and is trying to stop him. Really melodramatic movie. There's another movie which the director had made a couple films that I really enjoyed. At least one, anyway. Predator 2, I think. Stephen Hopkins. Yeah, Stephen Hopkins was the director of Predator 2. He went on to do the 24 series. Anyway, Blown Away is a pretty bad movie. And finally, there's North. North is a Rob Reiner comedy. I think Rob Reiner directed it, with Elijah Wood as the main character, as a kid who decides to divorce his parents, and he goes on a globe-trotting adventure looking for another couple to be his new parents. As it turns out, it's entirely a dream, and Bruce Willis plays like his spiritual guide or something like that. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And Roger Ebert famously titled a series of books after it because one of his lines in the review was, "I hated this movie." So yeah, it seems like there's a lot more disasters in 1994 than there were hits. But the hits were big and very Speed, Forrest Gump, and The Lion King especially, very big and popular and influential movies, especially Speed. Speed started like its own category, really. Oh no, I'm thinking of Die Hard. Sorry. Because Speed is Die Hard on a bus. Never mind. Anyway, that's 94. The next movie video I do is going to be on 96, so let me quickly sum up what happened in 95. You had Die Hard 3, which is called Die Hard with a Vengeance. John McTiernan returned to direct the third movie after he had skipped the second one. Apollo 13, with Tom Hanks as Jim Lovell, the astronaut, and the whole disaster. Rob Reiner directed the movie. Kevin Bacon, Gary Sinise, and Bill Paxton are the other astronauts. Ed Harris is in it as well. Best Picture nominee, and lost to Braveheart, but very admirable very well-respected and well-behaved movie. Good job, guys. Pocahontas, Disney animated movie, that was another big hit. And Batman Forever, the first Joel Schumacher. After Tim Burton did 2 Batman movies, Warner Brothers said, see ya, Batman Returns was too dark. Joel Schumacher, we'd like you to direct the next Batman movie, and he did, and it was a hit, but nobody likes it. Not anymore, anyway. I mean, some people like Jim Carrey in the movie, he's really funny as the Riddler, but Val Kilmer's kind of a stiff, and Chris O'Donnell is in it, and Nicole Kidman is in it, and Tommy Lee Jones plays Two-Face, and he's absolutely terrible. But it was a hit, of course, because it's a Batman movie, and they really had lots of marketing behind it. Not so lucky with the next one. Anyway, as I said, Apollo 13 lost Best Picture to Braveheart. Braveheart also came out that summer. That's Mel Gibson playing the Scottish gentleman William Wallace, who fights on behalf of Scottish independence from England. Best Picture, Best Director winner. Clueless came out that summer as well. Lacey Silverstone's big moment in the sun as a movie star, which didn't really work out as well for her as she probably hoped. And then you had Waterworld. Waterworld was, at that point, beat True Lies for its budget. You know, $180 million, I think, was the budget on Waterworld, 170, 180 million, because it was such a pain in the neck to actually make. While shooting on the water, on floating sets and on boats and what have you, you know, it took forever to make, and the sets sunk. But it ended up making money. People nowadays will call it a flop, but it actually did okay. It did pretty well. I think a lot of people went to see it just because they were curious. But it's not a bad movie. It's kind of fun, actually. Mad Max on the water, basically. Now let's talk a little bit about a couple of the movies that were disasters. You had Sylvester Stallone and Judge Dredd. Comic fans were livid that Judge Dredd actually took his helmet off in the movie. He's supposed to keep his helmet on constantly, even when he's taking a bath, apparently. Congo was a movie that was based on a Michael Crichton book about some adventure happening in the jungle and an ape that knows sign language. I really don't remember a lot about it, except Laura Linney's in it and Bruce Campbell gets killed. And Johnny Mnemonic. Johnny Mnemonic was a big disaster. Keanu Reeves is the main character in that movie, and he basically has a chip in his head that allows him to store information, and so he's a courier for corporations. And it's a futuristic movie, and it's got a lot of really weird set design and a lot of weird characters wearing weird stuff, and nobody seemed to like it very much. It was kind of a bomb, which is too bad, because he had been in Speed before, and everyone's like, Keanu Reeves is a huge movie star, he's going to make another big hit with a science fiction movie that turned out to be terrible. So that's what happened in 1995 in the summer. The highlights and lowlights of 1995. And as I said, the next video is going to be on 1996, and that will be a video that I post tomorrow. Yes, Friday. So I will see you then. And if you'd like to look at my Facebook page, of course, that link is below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.